All set now. Good morning. So my name is Christina Dillabo. I'm the Director of Communications for the Desert Southwest Conference, and this is Tuesday Talks, a weekly online session, gathering, meeting, conversation to go over recent questions that come to me about communications topics, but also, whenever possible, to try to collaborate and work out solutions together, because I certainly don't have all the answers. I'm just able to connect with a lot of people to find out what other people are trying, what's working for others. So welcome, Sandy. So hello. So if this is your first time joining me or watching this recording, I hope to see you again next week. But I do always send follow-up notes via email about the conversation. I include links whenever I'm talking about, this resource or this article. I try to include those links in my follow-up notes. So today, the first thing I was going to talk about is copyright. So I'm not going to go into all the details about which licenses you should use and when you should renew things or whatever. For those of you that didn't know, the Desert Southwest Conference was able to negotiate some group license discounts for our churches right around when COVID started. I think that's when it started. Maybe we started just before that. I don't remember. So thanks to apportionment dollars, our conference is able to pay for all of the churches' copyright, the CCLI copyright license, the streaming license through CCLI. And in some occasions, we also work with the church to do the CCLI Streaming Plus. So some of the questions that I get would be, well, we're using one license. Does the conference pay for that? Or we're using, what are some of the other ones? There's church, let me see here. CCS, yes, Christian Copyright Solutions. That's another very popular one. There's many different licenses, and some of them are CVLI, I think it is, and that's a video related one. So you might use that if you're going to host an event and show a video, and so it gets really complicated. And even when you think like, okay, so I've got it all straightened out now, all we need are these two licenses. Maybe it's the conference paid copyright license because we show PowerPoint lyrics in person for worship, and we use the lyrics for our choir rehearsals. We've got copies for them. And then we also stream our worship service. So we're covered because the conference pays for the CCLI streaming license. So it might seem like, okay, got it all worked out. I don't need to mess with any other organizations or companies or other licenses. But that's really just not even the case. It can be if the only things that your church is using are songs that are covered through those two licenses. But even then, and thankfully David Topping's here, so if you have questions, he might be able to help us out with that. Even then, some of the songs that you might find under Song Select, which is now covered as part of the basic license through CCLI, and so you can go in and search for, well, is this song covered? Maybe it's a public domain song or a song that is covered by CCLI, but turns out that the lyrics or the arrangement is newer than what the CCLI website is talking about that's covered in your license. So in those instances, you might need an additional license. So it gets super complicated, and I'm thankful that that's not my area that I need to know all the answers for. And hopefully, if you're lucky enough to have someone like David Topping on your staff, David's a musician himself and has extensive experience in doing research both for the conference and for his churches because his wife's a pastor. And he's, like, as I said, a musician on his own. So he's got all kinds of experience trying to figure out which licenses are needed depending on what it is that the church is going to do with that music. Is it going to be recorded? Is it going to be on social media? And so it's living online for a while. I mean, that's also something to consider. If it was, let's say it's a song that is covered in these licenses, the lyrics are covered, the arrangement is covered, everything's great, and you found this beautiful YouTube video where some other church performed it and is showing it, or maybe it's the professional group that's performing it and put it together on YouTube and is showing it on YouTube. So because your church is covered through the CCLI licenses that are already paid for by the Desert Southwest Conference, thanks to apportionment giving, you might think that you can go ahead and use that YouTube video. Well, no, that's not covered. That's not part of the license. So you'd need to either contact that organization that has that YouTube video to find out, you know, if they were the ones that performed it, all that business, to get their permission to use it. Any graphics that they use for it, if they purchased images to use for their YouTube streaming, those graphics, if they purchased them, that means they probably bought the license to be able to include it in their live stream. Maybe they didn't, but if you used it without buying a license to do it, to show it, then your church would be liable. So I can't stress enough, it's very, very complicated. There's many, many ways to easily mess up. So thankfully, I know for my sake, and David's been really helpful to help, nice enough to help many of our churches with those types of questions. But your music director probably already has all the information they need. They know exactly what's covered, what's not covered. And in some cases, you might have a whole worship team that's working on it. So just keep that in mind that if you're the graphics person that's creating the slides or looking for videos or whatever, just always question, check to see where did they get it, and see if a license is needed. One thing that I found recently as I was trying to provide this topic for you all is that GCFA, that's our General Commission on Finance and Administration, has articles and resources about church copyright licensing options. And they have, I don't know, I think they called it a team. I'm looking at one article in particular right now that was published in 2021, and I will send it to y'all. But they talk about the overview of copyright law, copyright guidelines for videos and images, common church copyright myths, about infringement. And so it's still, even though they've got all in there, it is very confusing. So what they've done is they have a questionnaire that you can fill out if you would like to begin a process with GCFA to talk to them about, here's what my church does, and these are the licenses that I get through the conference, or this is the license that we buy through our church. Are we covered? So they can work with you on your specific ministry needs and help you identify what licenses you will need if you want to host an event where your choir or band performs. And, I mean, there's so many different situations. So I'm going to send that to y'all. But since we're talking about it, are there any questions that you maybe joined to talk about? Yeah, go ahead, Sandy.
To provide David's information to contact him. I know that you're inundated with work, and I'm sure he is too, but it would be nice to be able to contact him and talk to him about what we may need, down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. So for those of you that joined online, David has put his contact information in the chat, and I will be including that information in the follow-up email that I send with my notes. I'll include any notes in there about, fees that are involved or anything like that. And you can work with David directly. And again, the GCFA option is there as well. I'll check to see. I didn't check to see if there's any fees involved with reaching out to GCFA. I think that there is. I think they say in the article something about a small fee, but they don't say what that fee is. So I'll be sure to look at that before I send it. All right. Any other questions or comments about that?
Well, just one thing. I think as most churches, we have file cabinets of music for choir that we've collected over the years, 30 some years or whatever. There's maybe, I would say 25% that we find is licensed that we can use for live streaming purposes. What do you, because everything is live streamed nowadays. Any of our music is live streamed. So we try to ensure that everything is licensed. How do we handle just keeping all of our music that we're not able to live stream? I guess we can figure something out, but is there any way around any of that, of all the collections that we have?
Let me see if I can understand your question. So your question is, how would we use the songs in our live stream that are not covered through the CCLI licenses?
Yeah. I don't think we can because they're not licensed. So we just have file cabinets of music that we cannot use because they're not licensed. They're collecting, so to speak.
So although the conference pays for those 2 licenses, that doesn't limit your church from purchasing additional licenses. In fact, I would guess that most of our churches probably do buy other licenses besides those 2 CCLI licenses.
Yeah, we have CCLI, we have 1 license, and we have CCS, Christian Copyright Solutions. That we have all 3 of those for live streaming, performance, and such. But I just it's a waste to have all of the other music that we cannot use because it's not covered under license, just sitting there.
Go ahead, David.
My recommendation, even though it can be frustrating and tricky, is to try to reach out to the current license holder, if you can find it, of uncovered music one-on-one. We've gotten yeses typically when we've asked, but yeah. OneLicense.net does have a lot of blanket coverage. You may not find the individual song when you search in there, but if you go to their whole list of publishers pages and then even expand that out, because publishers buy publishers, like big fish eat little fish, and and you'll find that a lot of those choral music publishing houses are probably covered under one license, but not all. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a good place to start because as every 3 months, our music team gets together, gets music ready for the upcoming months. And, we're just kind of tossing things back and forth. This is licensed, this is not, and it would be nice to utilize some of the pieces that we want to.
Yeah, almost all publishers have a licensing inquiry department that one can reach out to. Whether they're super responsive or not varies, but yeah, I think it's worth, if you really want to do a particular song, it can be worth the effort to reach out and try to research it. Okay,
thank you very much.
Thanks, David. And be sure to mention when you're reaching out to them where you would have how long you would have them online, where you would have them, that you're not charging for those performances, that you're a nonprofit organization, you're blah, blah, blah church. That's often, I think maybe that's part of why we have been able to get permission, like for annual conference or something like that. Okay. And then maybe even include the option, if your church is open to it, if you really, really want to use a song, they might let you go ahead and use it and even stream it, as long as you agree to take it down after a week or after a year or something like that. So maybe even include that in your inquiry. You're willing to take it down from your social media accounts or YouTube or whatever within the whatever amount of time that they allow.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, I have David. A question.
Go ahead.
regarding the graphic that sometimes my sermon, I would like to show a picture from the internet. Can I do it without license, or do I have to have always license for any picture that is in the internet?
Well, if it is a image that somebody would have to buy to be able to use it for whatever, then yeah, you would need to purchase the license for that. Even if you didn't download it and put it somewhere else, you're technically publishing it in your live stream. So it's not yours, it belongs to someone and they make money off of it. So you would need to buy a license to be able to show it in a stream scenario and to have it archived if you're going to keep it up in your YouTube or Facebook or whatever history. Now there are options for images to show that are either copyright free or public domain. And there are websites where you can find images like that individuals have put up or created themselves. And I'll include some of those in my links to those sites in my follow-up notes. I do want to caution you that on some, like, which one was it? I think it was Pexels, P-E-X-E-L-S, for example. That's a website that I learned of recently that offers free images, but I don't know anything really personally about Pexels, but I know that the conference has been approached about an image that was downloaded from Pexels, and it's supposed to be free or copyright free, but this legal team was going after us saying, you don't have the rights to use it. And so in some further Google searching, we discovered that that's a common thing that this organization was doing, was putting up images in there as if they are free to use, but they actually do require a license, and then they go after you when they find you. It's very, very shady. Very shady. So I'll send you, I'll include in my follow-up notes some links to some places where you could search for images that to the best of my knowledge are copyright free, or I know for a fact that these are copyright free because they're UMC images or there are conference images. But there's also options for doing a Google search for images and searching for whether or not they're licensed somewhere. So I won't go through all the details about that, and I'll try to figure out some kind of a training that I could do to show you, demonstrate how to search for things and things to watch out for. The one thing I want to mention of things to watch out for when you're Googling for the licensing, is it copyright free or public domain on an image, is you might find, let's say there's a photo of a pencil that you did a search for, and you find that exact image in several different Google responses. And some of them are copyright free, and some of them they do charge. If you find some that do charge, then don't use it. Somebody made a mistake somewhere by putting it in a copyright free area. Just, don't use it. So that was a quick little watch out. Any other comments or questions about that? Okay. Yeah, so I mentioned earlier about if you got permission to use a video that somebody else created that's in YouTube, you got permission to use it, but they've got images in there. Remember to ask them about the images in there as well, because even if they bought the license to use it, and so they're like, oh yeah, it's all legal, we bought the license, it can be streamed. It's their license, not yours. So you would also need to buy a license if you wanted to use that video that has those images. So watch out for that. All right, so next item is about church membership management software, church software. I don't even know what to really, I think it's membership management software, but then there's also the financials, which turns out could be a whole separate thing. So I do want to thank Betty for sending me all back and forth lots of emails about what they're using. They use ShelbyNext And I was wondering what some of our other churches are using to manage, and would you recommend it? Like, I don't want to turn this into a bashing about about any software or companies, but if you would recommend the software that your church is using, let's go ahead and share what it is that you use. Oh, wait. Oh, you, okay. Go ahead, Sandy. And then Jim.
Chino Valley United Methodist Church has been using the Realm ACS software, basically from a financial part of it that does a lot of that, but it also has a wonderful position for membership, any type of information, personal information like that. Unfortunately, it was underutilized for a period of time. So we're getting hopefully on track with that because we've had things in Excel, instant phone directory, Word, Publisher. I mean, we have all those things, and trying to keep all of those things updated with the same information. We can do all of that on Realm, and their tech support has been wonderful in helping me get started on getting that organized in a good fashion. So it's hopefully down the road. By the end of the year, my plan is to have all of that taken care of on that one program and not,
Yeah.
take everything out of the.
So it's ACS or is it Realm?
It's a combination, I believe. ACS is Realm and ACS somehow work together. ACS, I believe, is the financial part of it.
Okay.
I apologize. I'm just learning about all of that stuff here, even though we've had it for quite some time. So,
No problem.
but yeah, there's a financial module that is part of Realm that we can, I believe, add information on contributions, that type of thing. So,
Oh, perfect. Would you say that it's pretty easy to use?
it is. If you're savvy in a database entry type scenario, you're able to add some fields, take away fields to tailor it to your needs, to your church, and it can be pretty widespread, or however you want to do it for reporting, printing reports and things like that. I think it's okay. I think it's a good thing for somebody who's been involved with a database entry. It's just learning a new aspect of another program, but we enjoy it.
Okay. And is it cloud-based or does it live on a server at your church?
I believe it's cloud-based, I think. I'm not quite sure.
Okay. Cloud-based. Awesome. Thank you. Jim.
We're also using Servant Keeper. I see somebody just put that in the chat, and that seems to work pretty well. The person that does that has been doing it for years. So my biggest concern with that in two previous churches is when you lose the staffing, they're usually volunteers. It's tough for somebody new to learn. So it takes a while.
Yeah.
Okay. How about, and Chris also uses Servant Keeper. So 3 here, Jessica uses Servant Keeper. About, yeah, go ahead, David. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. I see a question in the chat about moving to Tithely, but it's combination with Breeze. Yeah, Tithely and Breeze have joined forces, and that can be a good thing, especially if they both had good features that they're going to integrate together. And they're both very affordable. Breeze has been one of the smaller ones, but more affordable, used by small membership churches. So yes, Bob, even for small membership churches, I think so. And so those are good options to look at. I've worked with some of the local churches on those, and I think they give you plenty of features. The Realm is great too. We were using that at Faith United Methodist Church when I was there. So lots of good things. Servant Keeper goes back much further. It used to be server based or single office computer based. But then they started offering a cloud-based connection, but it was hybrid. You kind of still had to have it on your computer locally. It wasn't 100% cloud, even though they called it cloud. Now they might have moved that to an all cloud. I'm not 100% sure. The other one that that is relatively new, it's kind of an all-in-one, is called, wait a minute, I've got it right here, Subsplash. We've had some churches, because they offer even live streaming, which is not something you'll find in most of them, like Realm or Servant Keeper, or those. So it has, in addition to your membership management and an app, for the members to use, it also can support multicasting and live streaming to different sources. I know Central United Methodist Church is using that, for example, right now. And the other one that I'm more familiar with is Planning Center Online. Planning Center is modular, and so you can dip your toes into it even for free. Like planning, the whole idea, they grew off of planning services, and so they have a free product you can use on a limited basis, where you could plan your worship services, plug in the music, have a little database of your songs, have a database of people who serve roles like liturgists, etc., and it puts all that together. And then they also have all the other modules like membership management, giving, calendaring, etc., even check-ins. Like, so if you wanted to do attendance, even like on an iPad, if you wanted to check people in your church services, but you have to gradually add those packages and pay for them. And so in church management software, it's always been a little bit, you get what you pay for, and it can be a little pricey, but there are affordable solutions. And I think I'm done.
Yeah, thanks. And Tidely also does check-ins. I didn't know that. Interesting. And yes, ShelbyNext has check-in options as part of the membership module. And what else was it? Oh, and some of those, like Subsplash, I know is one of the recommended or kind of ministry partners. So I don't know if you would get a discount if that's what it is that GCFA can connect you with Subsplash. And so I'll have to look and see if the benefit there is just that, hey, we know a lot of our churches use it. We recommend this product. It's pretty stable. Or if they recommend it because they're able to get a discount for our churches. So I'll look into that. But that's through GCFA support systems, I think. So I'll send you guys information, my follow-up notes. And there's also, if you haven't heard of it, it's not a church management software, but it's a way to get a discount on church management software, is TechSoup. David Topping had clued me into this many years ago, and the conference takes advantage of great benefits thanks to TechSoup. In fact, the Zoom licenses that we get at such a great discount started out because we would get 50% discount thanks to TechSoup. And then just working with Zoom directly, they were able to give us additional group discounts. So I might as well mention that. If your church isn't already using Zoom or is using Zoom, but not through the conference, you can get a much cheaper license if you purchase it through the conference. The conference doesn't benefit anything by churches purchasing 1, 2, 3, 50 licenses. In fact, it's just more administrative work for us, because then we've got to work with your church to renew it and manage changing from one email address to another email address when their staff changes. So not sharing this to try to make money or get some kind of benefit. It's just something that we were able to work out right around COVID time to meet church needs of having a live stream and meet with others online like this. So nothing shady. If you're interested, the Zoom licenses through the conference are $120. That's a flat fee. It doesn't matter if you started in the middle of the year or 2 months left in the year or at the beginning of the year. Each year, it would be $120 to renew your license. And it's an enterprise level license that also includes a webinar license for up to 500 people to be in the webinar. All right. So if there's no more questions or comments about that, about that particular subject. Thank you very, very much, everybody, for sharing. David, always great to have you join us. You've got great information. And then the last one that I want to talk about is the archives and history, records management. Whether your church just merged with another church, if your ministry is ever having to talk about, hey, we've completed our ministry cycle, we are now going to close, or we're going to become something new. If you've got boxes and boxes, with my earpod. Sorry. If you've got boxes and boxes of records and files and you don't know, when is it safe to get rid of these? I mean, like, I know at the church I used to work at, we used to have tons of boxes up in the sanctuary loft, and then we had tons of boxes near the church office, and then we had tons of binders in the church office. And I had no idea, working in the church office, when it was okay to go ahead and shred documents, or what do we do with them after so many years. Thankfully, the United Methodist Church has got our backs. There is a records retention table that easily kind of shows you. In fact, I'm going to show my screen real quick to this one. No, let me get to that first. That this table shows you quickly at a glance. I just had it open. Here it is. There we go. So let me get back into Zoom, share my screen. All right, this table is shows you at a glance what you need to keep, what you can get rid of, how long. Like this column here, total, shows you how many years you need to keep it. Current was how many years. Oh darn, I don't remember. I'll have to watch it. But thankfully, there is a training that explains the whole thing. I'm going to send you all the link to this particular document, which is, sorry, scrolling way up to the top. It's the guidelines for managing records of the local church. It's still the current one, even though it's 2017. It's the current guidelines offered by GCAH. That's who they are. And I'm going to share my screen again because there's another really cool thing I want to show you. If you go to the Desert Southwest Conference website, if you went to dscumc.org/archives, you'd arrive at our archives and history page that shows both the announcement that we have a new archivist starting on July 17th, and that our beloved Jennifer Barber, it has moved on. She's moving to another state with her husband. And so her last day was last week. This is our new archivist, Margaret Shannon, or she will be. And right here is the guidelines for managing records. That's where you'll find that document that I showed you, and it has the retention guide. And if you watch these two videos, Jennifer, in this particular video, Jennifer shows you what each column means in that retention table. I know that we're going to have training coming up with our new archivist. I'm going to include the links to those videos, even though it's all in that same page. I'll send it all to you so you can go straight to whatever you need. But if you have a specific question about your records, I know a lot of what we get when a church closes, or if I don't know that a church has ever been abandoned, but that's one of the line items, I guess, that it would be a situation where you would need to transfer the records over to the conference, would be things like the bank statements. That's not part of what the Desert Southwest Conference archives collects. It does get turned in, and then we just have to get them all shredded. But there are some documents that are kind of forever, like the US government says, you need to save this, you need to have it available. And if your church closes, then the conference needs to have it available. And some documents that only for a few years we need it. And then after that, we can shred them. So like I was saying, if you do have specific questions about the archives at your church, if you have someone new that's going to be your church historian and they're looking for training, email me and I'll get you information about that. There is a training that's available now online through the General Commission on Archives and History has opened up enrollment for the Church Historian School. So I will include a link to that. I think that it's all online. The classes, or yeah, I guess it's classes or workshop starts September 4th this year. And what else? I think that's it. Any questions about that? All right, I know this. Oh, yes, go ahead, Sandy. You're muted.
Here I am. As many churches, we have lots of records, boxes and boxes and boxes. And someone mentioned the other day, what would it be like to scan the documents, put them on a hard drive or some type of a digital scenario? Can we do that, number one? And number two, do we need to retain the hard copies of things if it's digitized?
Sandy, you are amazing. You're asking all the best questions.
Oh.
So yes and no. Some documents, so things like a baptismal record, for example, that is like, that's a legal document that a person could use if they lost their birth certificate, never got a birth certificate, whatever, their baptismal record can be used in lieu of that somehow. But a digital copy of it is not really legal because I don't know if there's a certain way of doing it so that it digitally, it's the one copy of it. You know, that's the problem with digital records is it could be altered. It could be that there's, you know, that's not the latest one. There's a newer version of it. So there is guidelines for digital records as well. And so I'll include that link as well. I think it is linked on our archives page, but I have that in one of my tabs open. So part 1 and part 2 of those 2 videos on training, and they're both pretty short. I think they're about 10 minutes a piece. So it's not an hour-long boring video. It's interesting.
Okay.
So I recommend watching those. I think that they talk about which records can be digitized. Of course, that video is fairly old, but even the training on digital records and the guidelines for digital records, they even talk about how that's evolving, you know. So the information that we had from the recording is still relevant now. There are certain documents that you can't digitize them and consider them like legal, but there are other documents that you can. So the baptismal record, and there's another one that you can't digitize and consider that legal and then destroy the original.
So what about financial records? And, you know, all of your financial records from the beginning of time to present.
I'll have to look that one up. I don't remember that one.
That was just a brief discussion, you know, so many boxes of all of these financial records. We're finally to the point where they're very well organized. Now, storage is an issue with all the boxes. Can we digitize them and then, or do we have to keep? So there may be some documents that we would have to keep from the financial end of it, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And I know that some of the records, just want to make sure I'm not muted. Okay, good. I mentioned about the bank statements that we would get. So like from a conference standpoint, the bank statements, we have no need for those, but the financial records that we would collect are basically the annual charge conference report. That's what we would need to collect. At a local church level, I'm looking at the report now. I might as well just share my screen.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Let's see here. Looking to see. Well, let me start from the beginning. Is that it? Yeah. Accident injuries, account requests, accounts payable records. So if it's accounts payable after 7 years, it's done. And as you can see, we never need them.
Okay.
Accounts receivable record, same thing after 7 years. I can't remember what the current was. If it was like maybe the latest 2 years is what you need to have a bit handy and available, but in your archives, you only need it for up to 7 years. Annual fiscal reports, the closing of the books, financial reports, balance reconciliation records, data count reports, permanently keep them. Audit records would be permanent. Bank deposit records only for 7 years. Bank deposit slips for 3 years. The bank statements for 7 years. That's probably, budget records permanent. So it depends on what financial records you're talking about. Certificates of deposits and canceled checks, 7 years and 3 years. So you'll get a copy of this. You can review that with your team and work on a plan to get the old stuff shredded.
So when the retention schedule indicates that documents need to go to the conference, where do we send them to the conference? Where is it specifically going to?
It's going to our office in Phoenix, and the easy email address would be archives@dscumc.org. You would connect with our archivist and they would schedule a time to either come down to your church to review and go through stuff with you and take the things that we do need. Or let's say if your church was closing or something like that, then you could also just drop off the stuff at the conference office.
Okay.
But really, if your church is open and functioning and everything, I don't think that there's any records that you would need to send to the conference archives. That's just if your church is going to close, or even if it merged. That's something I just learned. I thought when a church merges with another church, one of those churches have to send their records to the conference archives, but no, because the church didn't close, it's merging, and so its membership records need to go with the church that it merged with, because those still are live records. They're still members. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead, Bob.
So is the archivist going to go to all the corners of the annual conference to meet with the local church to decide what records they're going to keep and what they're not?
She has, yeah, all over the place. She's even driven out to California and other states to pick up records that, like when Claremont moved, she went to California to review their records. There was other churches that somehow, because our conference didn't originate as Desert Southwest Conference from the get-go, we were part of one conference, and then we had stuff that was part of another conference. And so as different churches or conferences have changed, yeah, she's had to make some trips out there to go through documents. Occasionally, though, churches are able to go through this stuff either. I don't know if they're just talking with her over the phone and going over things. I've never worked with her on it. I just know that she has had to go to a lot of different places to help and physically like climb up ladders and get boxes down and dig through stuff. And, so yes, the archivist is hands-on.
One other question I had, and I was slow on the trigger on the previous when you were talking about the Zoom licenses. How do we know when our license is due for renewal?
So that's another great question. All of the Desert Southwest Conference licenses renew in January. So you'll start getting email notifications from me, and I'll start talking about it in Tuesday talks that the renewals are coming up. Like we have to pay for it at the end of January. So I try to get churches to pay for them sometime during January so that the money's there and it's all covered.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Any other questions or stuff to share? All right, then thank you very much for joining me, and I will be sending you your follow-up notes